Snow drifted slow as breath, and the mountains whispered like old ghosts. The wind carried the scent of pine and smoke, and somewhere between those silences, she stumbled. Her name was Elsie. Or maybe it had been. Her family stopped saying it the day they sold her to a trader for a single mule and a crate of whiskey. They called her lame. The word stuck to her like frost on glass. A twisted ankle years ago had left her walking uneven, but it was the way she carried pain, quiet and uncomplaining, that made her seem smaller in a house that prized noise and strength as, oh, when the wagon left her behind at the foot of the ridge, she didn't cry. She only wrapped her shawl tighter and watched it roll away, fading into the white. Above her, the mountains stood vast and unfeeling. She had no map, no food, only the memory of a mother who once sang to her by the fire. She began walking toward the thin trail of smoke curling from far ahead, a promise of life, or at least warmth up wide dusk. Her shoes had torn. Blood dotted the snow behind her like petals. She reached a clearing and saw a cabin half buried in drift. A single lantern glowed from the porch. A man stood there, tall, broad, wrapped in a coat of wolf hide. His hair was streaked with gray, though his face was not yet old. He watched her the way a wolf watches a wounded deer. Quiet, cautious, almost pitying. "You lost?" he asked, voice rough like gravel. She didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled from cold, not fear. "Just cold," she whispered. He looked past her, scanning the tree line. "No one with you?" She shook her head. "No one ever is." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped aside and motioned her in. The cabin smelled of pine resin and smoke. A single bed in the corner, a table scarred by years of work, and tools hanging neat on the wall. She moved toward the fire and knelt near it. Holding her hands to the flame, he set a tin mug beside her. "It's birch tea. Not much else this season." "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded but didn't look at her. Instead, he sat by the table, mending a broken harness strap. His hands were scarred, steady, used to doing things alone. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, but clean. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, only the crackle of fire spoke. After a while, she asked, "You live here all by yourself?" He grunted. "Wasn't always." She understood that tone, the weight of it, lost spoken without words. She looked down into the steam rising from her mug and thought of her father. How he had refused to look her in the eye when they'd taken her away. When she finally stood, her knees buckled. He caught her without thinking. For a moment, her hands pressed against his chest, feeling the thud of a heart that hadn't been touched in years. "I'll be fine," she murmured, trying to pull away. He let go slowly. "You can rest here tonight. There's hay in the loft. Warm enough. I'll leave at dawn," she said. More to herself than him, he gave a faint nod, but his eyes lingered, studying the limp in her step, the raw skin on her palms. Later, when the cabin had gone still and the fire sank to embers, he looked toward the loft where she slept. The snow kept falling outside, burying the old tracks that led to the past. He whispered to no one. "They said the same about my wife. Called her broken. She just needed someone to wait long enough to see her stand." And upstairs, though neither of them knew it yet, Elsie heard him. She pressed her face to the rough blanket and closed her eyes as the fire popped below. For the first time in years, the dark didn't feel cruel. It felt like a pause before something kind. Morning came softly, like someone laying a warm cloth across the world. Elsie woke to the sound of chopping wood outside. The loft smelled faintly of hay and old cedar, and for a moment, just one, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned like a bruise pressed too hard. She sat up slowly. Her ankle throbbed, stiff from cold. She could hear the axe rising, falling, the steady rhythm of a life built alone. When she climbed down the ladder, he was already bringing in the firewood. Snow clung to his boots, to his beard. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of winter. "You're awake," he said simply. She nodded. "I'll go today, once I can walk." He eyed her ankle. "Walk where?" She opened her mouth, closed it. The truth was, she had nowhere. No one waiting. No road that wanted her feet upon it. He seemed to understand without asking. "Eat first." He cooked quietly, no wasted motions. He fried salt pork in a skillet and placed half on her plate. It was more than she'd eaten in days. She hesitated. "You don't have to share," she said. "I know." He didn't look at her when he said it, just sat down across from her. Outside, snow fell slow and silent. Inside, the warmth spread inch by inch. After breakfast, she helped wash the dishes. The water was so cold her bones ached, but the habit of helping felt good. She had been a burden for so long. Being useful felt almost holy. The man, Isaac, she learned, checked traps in the shed. She followed, limping slightly. He didn't tell her to stay inside, that he showed her how to scrape hides, how to stack wood properly so it would dry. Her fingers were clumsy at first, but he never sighed or spoke sharply. He moved slow so she could watch. It was the quietest kind of teaching, patient, wordless, kind. Hours passed, 18 midday. They sat outside on the small porch, watching the ridge line. The sky was a pale wash of blue, the kind that made silence feel sacred. She asked softly, "Why do you live this far from town?" He rested his elbows on his knees. For a long time, he didn't answer. "People talk," he said finally. "Out here, only the wind does." She thought of her family, of the way they said lame with disgust, as though weakness was a stain. Out here, no one said it. Out here, the only sound was the river under the ice and the gentle creak of the pines. She swallowed. "Do you ever get lonely?" He didn't look at her. "Sometimes." He paused. "But people can hurt worse than silence." She knew that was true, but she also felt something in the air between them, something fragile, curious. Not closeness yet, but possibility. That evening, he lit the fire early. The cold had a bite sharper than before, warning of a deeper storm coming. As she set the table, she glanced at a small wooden box on his shelf. It was worn smooth, the lid carved with a single name she couldn't quite read. She didn't touch it. But something in the box felt alive, like memory waiting. They ate in the hush of flickering light. Outside, snowfall thickened into a quiet curtain. He watched the window once, then twice. "Storm will trap us a while," he muttered. "You'll need to stay." She nodded. For the first time, she didn't argue. After dinner, he brought a second blanket to the loft. She reached to take it, and her fingers brushed his. They both froze, not out of fear, out of recognition, like two memories touching. His eyes flickered with something soft and aching. He withdrew his hand carefully. "Sleep well?" he murmured, but she didn't sleep, not for hours. She lay listening to the fire and the wind and the steady sound of his breathing below. Once, she heard him shift, heard the chair creak where he sat alone. She wondered if he was looking at the box on the shelf too. If the past still kept him company. Sometime deep into the night, the storm raged. The cabin trembled. Icicles rang like chimes. She tucked the blanket under her chin and whispered into the darkness, barely a breath. "Thank you." She didn't know if he heard. But downstairs, a chair creaked. And the fire was fed wood at 3 in the morning, just to keep the loft warm. By dawn, snow buried the world waist high. Trapped together, she expected fear, panic, restlessness. But what came instead was the first true quiet of her life. They spent the morning side by side, mending tools, sorting kindling, stoking the stove. He said little, but occasionally he asked if her ankle hurt, if she needed rest, if she wanted to learn how to sharpen a blade. No one had asked her what she wanted in years. By afternoon, the sky dimmed again. The storm wasn't ending. Isaac brewed tea. They sat at the small table as the wind moaned against the walls. He stared into his cup for a long time, then spoke without lifting his eyes. "My wife couldn't have children," he said quietly. "The town said she was useless, weak. They made her believe it." Elsie's throat tightened. "She left," he said. "One day she walked into the snow. I never saw her again." Silence settled like ash. He lifted his gaze. For the first time, he met her eyes fully, open, unguarded, hurting. "They called her broken," he whispered. "But she was just alone." Elsie didn't speak. She couldn't. Her heart felt too big for her body. Isaac's voice dropped. "People see what's missing, not what remains." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She looked away, ashamed. He didn't move, didn't reach for her. But his voice warmed. "You're not lame." Her breath hitched. "You've walked this far," he said. "Most wouldn't have." A tear slipped down her cheek. And in that small, fragile moment, surrounded by snow and silence and everything they'd both lost, something shifted. Not love. Not yet. But a beginning. A tremor of trust. A soft, uncertain warmth in the coldest place on earth. As the night deepened. Neither of them spoke again. They didn't need to. The fire burned lower. And outside, the wind softened to a lullaby in the heart of a frozen world. Two souls, once discarded, once unseen, sat quietly at the edge of something new. The storm passed, but it did not leave the world the way it found it by morning. The mountains sparkled beneath a pale sun, and smoke curled from the cabin chimney like a prayer offered to the sky. Isaac stepped outside first, boots crunching through the crust of snow. Elsie watched from the doorway, arms folded around herself, breath soft in the cold air. The world was buried. Fences swallowed. Trails vanished. Everything reset. He looked back at her. Road to town's gone. Could take a week to dig out. She nodded. I don't mind. Something flickered in his eyes. Something like relief. They spent the day shoveling paths and clearing the roof. He handed her a smaller shovel, carved smooth by years of use. Her ankle protested, but the motion felt honest, real. Every scoop of snow was proof she was still capable of carrying weight. Maybe not fast, maybe not perfect, but steady. At midday, he stopped her with a raised hand. Rest. She leaned on the handle, breathing hard. He pointed to the porch rail, where a small tin cup steamed in the cold air. Hot broth. Her chest tightened. No one had ever paused work to care for her before. Not like this. Not with quiet attention that expected nothing in return. As she drank, Isaac sat beside her. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them felt warmer than the cup in her hands. For a long while, they simply watched the sunlight drift across the snow. I used to think winter was cruel, she said softly. Now it just feels honest. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. He glanced at her, thoughtful. People do. The words sank deep. She hesitated. If I had somewhere to return to, I would. I don't mean to stay longer than I should. His jaw tensed, then loosened slowly. He looked away, toward the trees. You can stay as long as you need. It wasn't an invitation. It was a shelter. A promise that didn't ask her to earn it. That night, the stars came out like cracks in the dark. Isaac lit a lantern on the table and began carving a piece of wood with the ease of muscle memory. Elsie sat by the fire, mending a tear in her skirt. The quiet was soft, almost fragile. After a while, she glanced at the small box on the shelf again. This time, he noticed, his carving knife stilled. You can look if you want. She blinked. I don't need. It helps, he said simply. Slowly, she rose and stepped toward the shelf. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the lid. Inside were letters, folded carefully, edges worn from touching. A lock of chestnut hair tied with ribbon. A pressed wildflower, brown with time. And a ring. Elsie swallowed gently. Your wife. He nodded once, gazed distant. She collected small things. Said they held memory better than words. Elsie traced the dry petal with a fingertip. They do. Her voice came out softer than she expected. I used to have a ribbon, she said. Blue. My mother tied it in my hair when I was young. She said it made me look like the sky. He watched her, listening. I kept it even when it was torn, even when the color faded. Her voice thinned. My sister burned it. Said I was too old to dream. Isaac's jaw clenched. He didn't speak, but the anger in his eyes wasn't for her. It was for every cruel word ever spoken to her. She set the box down gently and stepped away. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Don't be. His voice was rough. Some things deserve to be remembered. He didn't say you deserve to be remembered, but she felt it. The next days moved with quiet rhythm. They fed the fire, cooked simple meals, walked the ridge at sunrise when the world glowed gold on untouched snow. She began to hum while she worked, softly, shy at first. But once, he paused in the doorway just to listen, and something in her chest unclenched. In the evenings, he carved. She patched shirts. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes silence said more. That he taught her to read the sky for storms, to split kindling without breaking the grain. She taught him how to bind a cut with cloth so it healed clean. He never treated her as weak when her ankle ached. Only offered his arm without making it feel like pity. Trust did not fall over them all at once. It gathered slowly, like snow on a branch, weightless until suddenly, it meant something. One morning, she woke early to the smell of bread. Real bread, yeast and flour and warmth. Her breath caught as she came down the ladder. He stood at the hearth, pulling a loaf from the coals, cheeks flushed from heat, not cold. When did you? She whispered. Started before dawn. He set it gently on the table. You said once you missed the smell of home. She froze. She hadn't remembered saying that. She hadn't known he heard. I haven't had bread in, her voice broke. Years. He slid a knife across the table and Saturday, then we'll eat it slow. The loaf cracked under the blade, steam curling into the air. She held the slice in both hands like it was sacred. They ate in silence, each bite tasting like memory, like childhood, like warmth that didn't hurt. When she finished, tears filled her eyes, but they were soft, quiet ones. The kind that fell when something inside you finally loosened. She wiped them quickly. Why do you care? He studied her, not with confusion, with calm certainty, because someone should have. Her breath trembled. No one had ever said anything so simple and so holy. She turned her face away. Overwhelmed, he let her have the silence. After a long moment, he rose and opened the door. Snow glittered outside like glass in sunlight. Come on, he said. I want to show you something. She followed him across the yard, past the shed, through trees heavy with frost. They walked until the forest opened into a clearing she hadn't seen before. There, under the towering pines, lay a field of wildflowers, frozen in winter, but still standing. Petals delicate as lace, stems bending under snow, but unbroken. She gasped. The air caught in her lungs. Even in winter, beauty waited. Isaac stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. Wind tugged at his hair, but he didn't shiver. She loved this place, he murmured. Said it reminded her that even when the world dies back, it's only sleeping. Elsie knelt, brushing frost from a brittle stem. Tears blurred her vision. They're still here. He looked down at her. So are you. The words landed deep. She closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she believed him. They stood there a long while, surrounded by the quiet strength of things that refused to disappear. And though neither said it aloud, the truth lay gently between them. Some broken things weren't meant to be thrown away. They were meant to be tended, patiently, carefully, lovingly, until they bloomed again.